Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest in my series of Cambridge iGCSE English Language Exam Top Tips, helping you prepare for the exams coming up next month. And today we're looking at tip number 5, which is to think strategically. Well, let's take a look at what that means. It's really important that you plan your strategy and the way you're going to tackle the paper ahead of time in advance. So this tip goes hand in hand with tip number 4 that I've covered in a separate video. The key point here is to remember that you don't have to answer the questions in the order that they appear on the paper. You can complete them in any order you like. With this in mind, it's a good idea to think through how you plan to attempt your questions and what order you're going to try and answer them. So plan your exam strategy in advance, and I'd recommend not leaving the extended response task to the end because it carries the most marks of any question on the paper, and you don't want to risk a situation where you find your energy flagging towards the end of the 2 hours and you just find that you're not writing as well as you usually do under pressure of time, maybe even getting a cramp in your hand or whatever. So just think about alternatives, and I'll go through some of those in a moment. The second possible effect of leaving the extended response task question to the end is that you just run out of time. Sometimes it's the case that when students first start writing the paper, they're giving 110% to the comprehension questions at the beginning and spending maybe more time than they should be on those questions, and then consequently running out of time towards the end for the questions which carry the most marks. So you might want to think about that. You don't want to have a situation where you're running out of time. So alternative approaches, alternative strategies, there are a couple of different options here. You could start with the extended response task, so you're fresh and able to give it your best. And there's a case for starting with the last question and working through the question paper in reverse, so from back to front. That's something that you might want to experiment with. Another option is to start with the last section first. So that's the section based on text C. So if you'd like to warm up with the writer's effects question, for example, before you get into the extended response task, you might like to start with the questions based on text C first before moving on to the extended response task. A third option is to maybe work on the extended response task in the middle of the 2 hours and complete something else beforehand, maybe the summary, for example, task and the writer's style question, then do the questions based on text C and leave the comprehension questions to the end, which most students find they can complete quite quickly and accurately, so they can bank as many of those 1 markers as they can towards the end. And in that case, even if you were to run out of time, you've only lost maybe a couple of marks on those 1 markers rather than a whole chunk of marks that for the extended response task. So if you do want to complete the extended response task in the middle of the 2 hours, I'd suggest you read text C and the extended response question first before attempting the comprehension questions or the writer's style or the writer's effects question, whichever order you want to do them in. Maybe look at the extended response task question and the text, and then come back to it. And that has the advantage that your brain may be processing subconsciously what's required for that task before you get to actually completing it. So you're working on that in the background, as it were, while looking at other questions. So that's my advice. Whatever strategy you go for, you can experiment, see what works for you. And then once you've decided on a strategy that works, stick with that. Don't do what one of my students did 1 year, which was to change her strategy on the day of the exam and then get in a bit of a muddle. And then she nearly missed out a whole section of questions because she wasn't used to working in that way. And then she realized with the time running out that she hadn't answered some of the questions and she rushed to complete them. She did get a good grade in the end, but you don't want to do that because that's just giving yourself unnecessary stress. And we want to avoid that in an exam situation. So that's my roundup of tips for how to plan your strategy in advance of the exam in terms of how you want to answer the questions on the paper. A reminder that the Cambridge iGCSE English Language Exam Preparation course is still available, which covers all the assessment tasks, all the skills for success that you need to do well in the exams. I cover past paper assessment task walkthroughs, and I've got loads of exemplars included in the course to illustrate effective responses. So you have a clear idea and a strong idea of how to answer questions well and what examiners are looking for, so you can maximize your marks. Take care and see you soon for another exam top tip.